Hi there, welcome back to this channel. In today's video, we're going to walk through how we can use Azure Data Factory to orchestrate data movement from Azure Data Lake Storage into an Azure SQL Database, all while using managed identity for authentication. This is really important in enterprise environments because it means we are not dealing with password, connection string, or secrets. Instead, we are using Azure's built-in identity and access management. By the end of this video, you will not only see how we can set up the pipeline in the Azure Data Factory, but also how we can securely grant the right permissions in both ADLS Gen 2 and SQL Database so the whole process works seamlessly. So let's get started. So this is my Azure portal. Now the first thing we want to do is to create a brand new Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2, and I'm going to create a container and create a directory, and of course I'm going to load my sample data into the directory of the container of the ADLS Gen 2. To do that, I'm going to click on this storage accounts. In the case if you're unable to see this, just come to the search menu and I'm going to search for storage accounts. And once that is seen, just give that a click. And this is going to list all the storage accounts in your resource groups. And I'm going to create a brand new one for this project. So I'm going to click on this create, and it's going to take me to the create a storage account tab. And we've got the basics, advanced, networking, data protection, encryption, tags, and review plus create tabs. So under the basics, I'm going to provide my project details, which includes the subscription, and of course I'm going to choose the resource group where this storage account will be housed. So I'm going to come here and choose the MyRG as the resource group, and of course we're going to provide under the instance details the unique storage account which will be available for you to use globally. So let's just type in demo Abiola 123 and I'm going to click out, so it appears this is not being used and it's available for me to use. Excellent. Now I'm going to maintain the UK South region, and that's all I need to do under the basics. And I'm going to come to the advanced now because we want to create not just an ordinary Azure storage blob, but an hierarchical namespace enabled blob, which is going to be the ADLS Gen 2. I'm going to come here and I'm going to toggle on this enable hierarchical namespace, and it's going to give me the Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. And that's all I need to do. I'm going to click on the review plus create, and this is going to be validated for any potential errors. So in this case, it is done successfully, and I'm going to click on create. And it's going to be submitted, and in a matter of maybe 1 minute or thereabout, the Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2 is going to be provisioned. Whilst that's going on, we want to come to this tab, and I'm going to create the Azure SQL Database inside my Cornerstone server, SQL server. So I'm going to give this a click, and I can see I've got my SQL server. So I want to click on this create a database, and under the create SQL database I've got the basics, and I'm going to maintain the subscription and of course the resource group, which are automatically detected anyway. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom, and under the database details I'm going to give this a name. Let me just call this one Cornerstone DB1, and this is unique, and of course I can proceed. So I'm going to maintain this Cornerstone UK as my server, and I'm going to click on the review plus create. Again, it's going to be validated, and once this is done, I'm going to hit the create button. So this is going to be submitted for deployment, and I'm going to switch back to this, and this is fully provisioned. I'm going to click on go to resource, and we can see demo Abiola 123 storage account is created. And how do I know this is an hierarchical namespace enabled, that is an Azure Data Lake? I can see under this overview, I can see the hierarchical namespace enabled on here. So this is not just an ordinary blob, but an Azure Data Lake. Excellent. Now we want to create our container and our directory, and we're going to load our files. So I'm going to come to this containers under the data storage, and I'm going to click on add a container, and I'm going to call this one sales container, and I'm going to click on create at the bottom, and this is now created. So I'm going to go right into the container, and one of the possibilities in the ADLS Gen 2 is the ability to create a directory inside the container, and that's one of the selling points for the ADLS. So I can see the add directory, and let's just call this on sales files, and I'm going to click on save at the bottom, and it's now created as a folder, and we can go there, and I'm going to use the upload functionality, and I'm going to browse my local drive to bring my data into the directory of the container. So in this case, we want to just bring in this sales 2015 to 2020.csv, and I'm going to press open and click on upload. So this is going to be ingested into the sales files directory of the sales container, which is so straightforward. So we have this loaded. I'm going to come back here, and then the database is also fully deployed, and I'm going to click on go to resource. So we can see under the overview, we have all the details, which is really fantastic. Now we want to go ahead and create our Azure Data Factory to perform the data orchestration. And the core part of this video is to see how we can use the managed identity to authenticate using the ADLS Gen 2 and of course to authenticate to the Azure SQL Database. So I'm going to come to this tab and I want to go to my resource groups. I'm going to click on the my RG resource group and I'm going to click on create. This is going to take me to the marketplace and I'm going to search for factory and press enter. So I'm going to locate the Azure Data Factory, which is at the top here. So click on that and we want to click on create. Again, I'm going to maintain the Visual Studio Enterprise and the resource group, and I'm going to come to the instance details. Let's call this one Cornerstone ADF 1. And I'm going to select the same region, which is the UK South. And once that's done, it's going to be the version 2. And we don't need to configure the Git integration because that's not the focus of this video. So I'm going to click on review plus create. And again, it's going to be validated and I'm going to click on create. So this is being submitted for deployment and I'm going to wait for some couple of moments in order for this to be deployed. Excellent. So this has been deployed in a matter of seconds. I'm going to click on go to resource and then we can see the ADF. Let me just come back to the home tab and I'm going to go back to the resource groups and let's go back to the my RG and I'm able to see the Cornerstone ADF 1 created. I'm going to give that a click and let me just move it in the middle. So on the left hand side I've got the ADLS Gen 2 and of course on the right hand side I've got the Cornerstone SQL Database. So in the middle we have the Azure Data Factory. So having done this tool, we're going to proceed to grant the ADF Managed Identity Access to our ADLS Gen 2 in order to perform read and write operation. So to do that, now I'm going to note this as the name of the Azure Data Factory. I'm going to come here and I'm going to step out. So I'm going to go back to the same storage account and this is done in the access control, the IAM. So I'm going to click on that and I'm going to add a role assignment in order to authenticate to our storage account and I'm going to add a new role assignment. So under the job functions, I'm going to set for storage blob data contributor. So this allows to perform read, write and delete access to Azure storage blob containers and data. So once this is selected, I'm going to click on next. And then for the assign access to, now we want to assign to a managed identity, not user or a group or a service principal. So I'm going to click on this managed identity and I'm going to select the members. And I'm going to click on this managed identity drop down and we can see we've got Data Factory access connector for Azure Databricks, and of course I'm going to click on this so we can see the Cornerstone ADF, which is what we just provisioned in a matter of some seconds ago. So I'm going to click on that to select, and this is now selected as members, and I'm going to click on select, and this is now populated here, and I can see the object ID and the type as Data Factory version 2. So I'm going to click on review plus assign, and I can confirm the details before I hit the review plus assign. And this is going to be added as a role, which is so straightforward. Now, to check the role, I'm going to come to the role assignment tab, and I'm going to come to the bottom, and we can see the Cornerstone ADF Managed Identity, and we can see the role as storage block data contributor, and you can see the scope is within this specific storage account. Really straightforward. Now we're going to do the same thing for the Azure SQL Database in order to authenticate across. So I'm going to come here. Now in this case, we can't use the graphical user interface. We have to use SQL code to perform the authentication to grant the ADF Managed Identity to access our Azure SQL Database. So how do we do that? I'm going to come to the query editor and I can use the SQL Server authentication, or I can use the Microsoft Entra ID to authenticate. Let's use the Microsoft Entra. So with this and in this block, I'm going to just use this code and just walk you through the code. in this code, we're going to create a contained user for the ADF Managed Identity, which is the standard. And we can see we have this create user. I'm going to pass in the name of the data factory from external provider, and then we have this necessary permission to be granted. So we have this alter role db underscore data reader, and we're going to add member. So this allows us to perform read operation, and then we have this alter role db underscore data writer add member. So this part allows us to perform the write operation, and then we have this alter role db dd admin add member. So this is an extra permission that we can really grant, but this is actually not really important, but I just want to add it just for you to see. So how do we just fix all of this? It's so straightforward. I'm going to copy and I'm going to copy the name of my data factory. So once that is copied, I'm going to come here and I'm going to select this part. So since I want to perform the bulk replacement, I'm going to press Ctrl Shift L, and it's going to select this add name placeholder. So I'm going to do double quote, and I'm going to come inside the double quote, and I'm going to press Ctrl V to paste. Why? Because I've got this hyphen here that joins the cornerstone ADF together. So this has to be inside double quotation marks. And this is all we need to do. I'm going to press Ctrl A to select all the create and alter statement and hit the run button. And this is going to give us query succeeded, affected rows is 0. So we've granted the necessary ADF managed identity to the Azure SQL database, and we are good to go. Now the final point is to come to the data factory. Since we have the authorization and authentication from the ADLS and the Azure SQL database, I'm going to come here and I'm going to click on the Launch Studio, and it's going to come up in a matter of seconds. So what I'm going to do is to first create my linked services to the source, which is the Azure Data Lake Storage, and to the destination, the sink, which is the Azure SQL database. So I'm going to just expand this, and I can say the manage. So we do that here. Of course, I can do that later, but I love to actually follow this process of creating the linked services, and then the data sets, and then the pipelines, and then we perform the data orchestration. So in the manage, I'm going to click on the new, and for the new linked service, I'm going to search for the Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2 and click on continue. And I'm going to maintain this and just add a linked service. So Azure Data Lake Storage linked service, and I'm going to maintain the connect via integration runtime, auto resolve integration runtime. Now, because we want to use the managed identity, we don't want to use the account key. So I'm going to come to the authentication type, and this is the core part of where we need to use the managed identity in the Azure Data Factory. So I'm going to use the system assigned managed identity SAME. Click on that. And in this case, we are not exposing any string, any password, or anything. And this is the best way that we can perform this kind of orchestration in an enterprise organization. So once that's sorted, I'm going to choose my Visual Studio Enterprise subscription, and I'm going to choose the demo Abiola 123 storage account. So I'm going to click on test connection, and this is going to give us a successful connection without any stress. Amazing, connection successful. I'm going to click on create, and then we have the linked service to the source created. I'm going to click on that again, and I want to create the linked service to the Azure SQL database. So I'm going to click on continue, and I'm going to add Azure SQL Database linked service as the linked service name. And again, I'm going to maintain the connect via integration runtime, and I'm going to come to the Azure subscription. I'm going to choose that here, and then for the server name, Cornerstone server, and then I'm going to choose my Cornerstone DB1 database. And very importantly, I'm going to come to the authentication type. So we have options such as the SQL authentication, system assigned managed identity, which of course is what we are particular about. And then we can also use the service principal, user assigned managed identity. So I'm going to click on the system assigned managed identity. And again, they can say we don't need to export any password, we don't need to use any string, which is really fantastic. And I'm going to come to the bottom. So we can also do things such as always encrypt and so on and so forth, but this is actually not important for now. So I'm going to click on test connection, and again, this is going to give us a successful connection. Absolutely awesome. I'm going to click on create, and then we have the linked services for the sink and the source and the sink created Fantastic. Now I'm going to come to the author tab, and then we want to create the data set for the source and then the sink. So I love to organize things, so I'm going to close this for now. Now there's an ellipse that allows me to create a folder to house my data set so I can maintain clarity. So I'm going to create a new folder, and now this is absolutely not compulsory. You can create your data set straightforward without creating your folder, but let me just create my folder. So I'm going to call this one source folder, and I'm going to click on create. So this is now created, and I'm going to click on the ellipsis for the data set again, and then I want to create another folder for the sink folder, and I'm going to click on create. So we have the source and the sink folder. So I'm going to come to the source folder, right click and click on the new data set, and then I'm going to search for the Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2 and click on the continue. So our data set is a comma separated value, as we've seen. I'm going to click on the delimited text as the format and click on the continue, and I'm going to call this one source data set, and then I'm going to use the Azure Data Lake Storage linked service we just created not too long. So click on that. So we can go ahead and browse through the path where our files are. Don't forget, we have the top level container, and then we have the directory as the second level, and then we have all the files. So I'm going to click on this to browse, and I can see the sales container, and then we can see the sales files directory, and then we can see all the sales 2015 to 2020.csv. Now our goal is to append all of this as a single table in our Azure SQL Database destination. So I'm not going to select anything from any of these files. Just go ahead and click on OK, and this is now access. So our data contain first row as header, so this is fine. And then for the import schema, I'm going to choose none. So we don't want to import the schema, so click on OK. So this is now sorted. Now I can see the properties, and I can see the name of the data set, and I can close this for now. So we can see the linked service we created, and then we click on the test to test again, but this is fine. And then for the file path, we can see the name of the container and then the name of the directory. And in our case, we are not selecting any single file because we want to logically append all of the files. Now I can click on the preview data, and this is going to show me at least one of the files 2015 in that directory of the container, and this is absolutely awesome, working fine as expected. I'm going to close this for now, and then we want to go to the sink dataset. Click on this ellipsis and click on the new data set, and then I'm going to search for Azure SQL Database as the destination and click on continue. Let's just maintain this Azure SQL Database table, and then I'm going to choose the Azure SQL Database linked service we created. Now in our case, we don't have the table created in the destination, but you can always create this. But I'm going to use the auto create table. I'm going to click on this. You can see I don't have any table, so there's an option that allows me to enter the table name manually at the schema, and this is going to be created automatically based on what I configured in the sync tab of the data pipeline. So I'm going to just call this one sales as the schema name, and let's call this one orders as the table name. And again, we are not importing the schema, so click on OK. So this is now created. So I can see the property, and I can close this for now. Again, when I click on this preview data, this is going to show me nothing because we don't have the table created. No problem. So we have the two data sets created for the source and then the sink. And then we can go to the pipeline creation. Again, I'm going to organize by storing the pipeline in a folder. Let's call this one data integration pipeline. And I'm going to click, let me just copy this and click on create, and this is now created as a folder, and I can right click, or I can even click on the ellipsis. They are both the same, and I can create the new folder or the new pipeline inside that. So click on that, and then for the activities, we're going to use the copy data activity, and let me just minimize this for now, and let me just change this to what I copied, data integration pipeline as the name. And I'm going to come here. It's a good idea to give this a name so that I can differentiate the pipeline 1 from pipeline 2 and so on and so forth. I'm going to paste the same thing, and then I'm going to click on cancel. Now when I expand this one, I can see this has been renamed. It's as simple as that. So I'm going to come to the source tab. Now we don't need to create the data set again because this has been created. I'm just going to click on this drop down, and then you can see the source data set. And that's so straightforward. Now, because we have many files that we want to append logically, the file path type, file path in dataset would not work. So we're going to use the wildcard file path. So I'm going to click on this, and then we can see the top level container. And then don't forget, when we come back here and I go back to the containers, we've got the sales files directory inside the top level container. So I'm going to just give that a click, and then I can see it. So I'm going to just copy this. I can just even type. So I'm going to paste, and then we have the start. So this start is going to actually pick all the files, CSV files inside the specific directory of this sales container. So that's all we need to do. For now, for the source, I'm going to come to the sync, the destination. So since we've created the data set, I'm going to click on this drop down, and we can pick the Azure SQL Database, and we can see the right behavior. It's going to perform an insert behavior automatically, which is what we expect. And then we can come to the bottom, which is the most important part, the table option. I'm going to use the auto create table functionality because we don't have any existing table. So once this is selected, I'm happy to go. Now I can come to the mapping, and I can click on the import schema. So I'm going to see the source and the destination schema. Now don't worry, this is going to be in a string because this is a comma separated value file, and then we have this nvarchar. Now we can use dbt or any other tools to perform the data transformation later on, but we just want to focus on the managed identity. So once we are able to see this, we are good to go. So I'm going to click on validate to check for any potential mix that I need to fix. So everything is looking clean and tidy, and I'm going to close, and I'm going to click on this publish all. Now in this case, we have 5 items we want to publish, so you can see them in order. We have the 2 linked services, and then we have 2 data sets, and then 1 pipeline. So I'm going to click on publish, and I'm just going to wait for this to deploy to the data factory. And once that is done, we can go ahead and debug. So this is published successfully. I'm going to click on debug, and I'm just going to wait for some couple of moments. So this has now been provisioned to execute. So we can see the pipelines run ID and other details. So I'm going to click on this to refresh, and in a matter of minutes or seconds, this should give us a green check mark that this succeeded. So I'm going to click on refresh again, and there we go, succeeded. Absolutely fantastic. I can click on this output, and we can see all the informations. Now let's go to the Azure SQL Database and check our table. So I can see this refresh functionality, and this is going to allow the table to quickly come in if it does not come in. So I'm going to click on this to expand, and then we have this sales, which is the schema name dot orders as the table name. So let's just go ahead and query the table select star from sales orders, and I'm going to select this code, click on run, and let me just collapse this, and there we go. We have all our records 2020, 2018, 2015, 2019, and then we can go as far as we like. Absolutely cool. So our data integration is working thanks to the managed identity in Microsoft Azure. So in this video, we've learned how we can create this data integration by using the managed identity to authenticate to the Azure Data Lake Storage and authenticate to the Azure SQL Database. I trust you enjoyed this video. If you do, please like, comment, share, and follow me for more videos because there's a lot to come. Thank you for watching. Bye for now. Cheers.